1. In 2003, I returned home for my first year of college. I decided to switch schools and degrees and attend a local music technical college instead. I moved back into my parents' home and drove into the city each day for classes. In order to save on parking, I purchased a permit to park in a church's lot. This lot was about 10 blocks from the school, so I had a decent walk each day. About a week into classes, I was on my walk, smoking a cigarette, when out of nowhere a homeless man appears right next to me. He looks as you might imagine, late 50s, messy, salt and pepper hair, flannel jacket, snow pants, work boots, and no laces. He leaned in and asked, "Hey buddy, can I get a smoke?" Now, I was 19 at the time and a bit cocky. I was going to give him one, but he had to work for it. I told him he could have one, but he would have to walk with me to class and keep me company while he smoked it. He agreed, and off we went. We exchanged names and asked each other basic questions about our lives, the normal pleasantries. About a block from school, we tossed our butts, and he leans in again and says, "Hey buddy, I gotta ask, got any spare change?" I replied, "Sorry, I don't keep change on me." At the time, I tossed all my spare change in some glass milk jugs I had in my room. So we parted ways that day. I kid you not, 2 weeks later, this man has memorized my class schedule. Every single day, this man would meet me at the corner, ask for a smoke, and walk me to class. Every day asking me for change, and me having none. This continued for almost 15 months. The school I went to didn't have summer breaks. So now it's just a few weeks away from graduation, it's the end of winter, I'm getting ready in the morning for class. I put on my leather trench coat, grab my book bag, and head for the door. I look down at the floor and see 2 glass milk jugs overflowing with change. I look down at the huge pockets in my coat, then back at the change jars. I'm gonna do it. I take each milk jar and turn them upside down into each pocket. I have no idea how much 2 gallons of change actually weighs, and then I head off for school. Things start off like normal. He meets me at the corner, I give him a smoke, we set off. I'm trying my best to step lightly as not to make my pockets jingle. And I can't look him in the face because I don't want to totally lose it. We finally get to the end of our walk. We tossed our cigarettes, he turned to me and said, "Hey buddy, I gotta ask, you got any change?" So I turn to him and say, "Okay, I'm gonna make you a deal. I will give you all the change I have in my pockets if you promise to never ask me for change again. Deal?" He nods his head in agreement and holds out his one hand, palm up. "No, you don't understand. I have a lot of change." So he holds out both hands, cupping them together. "No," I said, "you don't understand. I have a lot of change." He stands there with a questioning look on his face, so I grab the bottom of his sweatshirt and pull it up, and make him hold it like a hammock. I then proceed to start shoveling handfuls of change into his sweatshirt, handful after handful, and his eyes are getting wider in sheer disbelief. Just when he thinks I'm about finished, I switch to the other pocket. More and more change. Its sound is echoing between the buildings, and both of us are laughing uncontrollably. I finally finished. He thanked me, and waddled off like a pregnant woman, and I went to class. The next day was bright and sunny. I parked my car at the church. I'm walking, big smile on my face. He meets me at the corner, also with a big smile on his face. He leans in with a huge grin and says, "Hey buddy, can I get a smoke?" "Yeah, buddy, you can have a smoke." 2. This was a few years ago. I, 22-year-old man at the time, was working in a foreign country for 6 months. The company that had brought me over was also managing the accommodation I was staying in, and looking after a lot of other people in the same situation as me, young and on site for a few months to work for a local company. As a result, I was living in a sort of small, very friendly expat community of around 40 people. On the whole, we saw each other a bit all the time, because we lived in the same residences, and we spent a lot of evenings together. Not everyone was necessarily the best of friends, but there were several groups of friends that got on well together. I dated a girl for a few days before ending the relationship because she was incredibly boring. Of course, she didn't take it too well, but it didn't matter. We just ignored each other cordially for most of the evenings in the group. One day, she wanted to organize a themed evening where we had to award prizes based on votes like the funniest, the most beautiful, the one who drank the most, etc., in the style of an Oscar ceremony. Everyone loved the idea and could vote, but people wanted me to be the one to host the evening and present the prizes to the winners. I was often the funny guy, which is why the others wanted me to host the evening. The girl reluctantly agreed under general pressure, and to tell the truth, I did too. I was a bit put off by the idea of doing it, even though the concept was really cool. As a result, I found myself having to help her organize everything. She had a lot of ambition. You could tell she wanted it to be perfect, even going so far as to find a photographer. She asked everyone to contribute to the evening, not a huge amount either, but still a significant one. The problem was that when the day of the party arrived, she realized that she was going to need a lot more help than she was willing to accept to organize the whole thing. And a lot of things were badly planned, or evaluated. Not enough food and alcohol, logistical problems with chairs and tables, quite a few things in the end. I had to pay out of my own pocket in a hurry, and willingly, to arrange with a friend and his pickup truck for us to manage the logistical issues. Dress 1 hour before the start of the evening. She was unbearable, refusing to let my friends help with the organization because they were invited to the party, and explaining that my purchases were perfectly useless because not everyone consumed like I did. I kinda ignored her and just do the work in the friends, and kept in reserve the extra food and alcohol. Anyway, the party took place and it was a great moment, except for her, who withdrew with crying in her room in the middle of the evening because it was raining a little, so it ruined her perfect party that she's taken so long to organize. Result, I still had to manage the rest of the evening alone in the end. And I even had to feed the poor guy she found as a photographer, while the guy did it for free, but he didn't pay his participation, and he wasn't in the group of people invited, so he just had to take photos and not participate in the party. I introduced him to everyone, and even gave him an impromptu award at the end for the best photographer. In the end, the party lasted way longer than anyone expected, and the reserve I'd prepared was all drunk and eaten. She eventually came back and also enjoyed the end of the party, and the bottle I did buy too. Where's the problem, you would tell me? Well, she had the nerve to call me the next day, asking me to pay my share of contribution, while I had paid more than 5 times the amount for food and alcohol that she did not want to plan for. So I ignored it at first, but every week she insisted, until the day I left the country, when she even sent me a message to tell me not to forget any part of my debt. I had a few hours after packing my things waiting for the taxi to take me to the airport, and before going around to say the last goodbye to some. I had a huge bowl in which I left all my small coins, so I counted all the coins, and fortunately there was the sum. But I still changed some big coins for small ones from a local seller. I filled the equivalent of a bottle of 2 liters like that, and I went to say goodbye to everyone. I met her and handed her the bottle in front of everybody, and I loved the look on her face when I gave her this big heavy bottle. It took me more than 1 hour and 30 minutes to count everything, but it was worth it, as a friend told me afterward, that she counted it to the last cent. That was my petty revenge. 3. This is my petty revenge story from my time as a military driver in Curaçao. I used to be in the Dutch Navy as a military driver. When I joined the Army, I used to be a Marine, but because of a chronic injury in my shins, I was transferred to the Navy, keeping my then current rank and function. If I didn't, I could not stay in the Army for an extended time, and after my term I would be discarded. On to the story. One perk of being in the Dutch Navy is the possibility of placing on 2 of the Dutch Caribbean islands, Aruba or Curaçao, in Dutch de West. I managed to secure a placement on the base at Curaçao, Marine Basis Perea. For the term of a year, my function was to be a driver among my fellow co-workers. Some of them were Marines, some of them were Navy like me, and about half of them were local personnel. I really got along with most of them, but of course you cannot be friends with everybody. It was a fact that the local drivers were cut some slack when they would mess up or behave in less than a desirable fashion. Why this was allowed was very unclear. To be very clear, most of them were excellent co-workers and really nice people, the same as my Navy and Marine co-workers. However, one of my local colleagues in particular was really cocky and considered himself above the law concerning the general rules of behavior. He would drive away in his vehicle with spinning tires, turn up the volume of the music really loud, and would drive very irresponsibly. There were other examples about his general behavior, but these are not relevant to this story. When he would transport people, it would be a little better, but with cargo he didn't care much. The results were minor damages on the vehicle and cargo. From time to time complaints from other people on site, but never enough to get him reprimanded properly. My fellow co-workers and I got annoyed with his untouchable attitude. We expressed our concern to our immediate supervisors, but nothing was really done. Now on to the revenge. Said co-worker used to be the first one to grab a vehicle in the morning, to use for a shuttle service for base personnel. The vehicle would always be parallel parked along the logistics office, where we would be during the day when we weren't driving. The last driver of the watch would park the vehicle there. When he would drive away, he would reverse away at full speed, turn the vehicle, and speed away to his first pickup point. At one point, I happened to be the last driver of the watch, and when I concluded my shift, which would be waiting for on-call pickups of personnel after regular working hours, I parked the vehicle. This time I steered the wheels of my vehicle away from the building before shutting it down. If he would drive forward, he would steer away, and backwards the front would steer toward the wall. The following morning, apparently my coworker ran the vehicle sideward into the wall, with the side just before the front wheel of the vehicle, because he thought it would back away in a straight line. He obviously didn't notice his front wheels being steered in. When my coworkers and I arrived the next morning, we saw him standing there at the damaged vehicle, with minor damage to the wall, talking to the Dutch military police. I was never suspected of sabotage of the vehicle to turn immediately when driving away, but my coworker finally got reprimanded because a little investigation showed that if he would have been driving away slowly like he was supposed to, nothing would have happened. To be clear, he could never make enough speed to get injured, just enough to dent the front car and scratch the paint off the walls of the building. Distance was about 50 to 60 centimeters from the wall. He couldn't continue his ride because the front bumper was bent on the collision and dropped a bit to the ground on one side. He was a little humbler after this, but not for very long. "4. To preface, I work at a firm in the southern United States. In a pretty small office, about 20 people, and we're pretty unorthodox. Trivia, play mini-golf inside, and can watch videos while working, etc. I'm a 25-year-old woman, I've been there a year, and Phil has been here 6 years. Our office began expanding with new hires that include a few minorities, including me, and a few other Hispanic people whose primary language is Spanish. Phil is a very religious old white man, about 58, with very traditional values, and likes things to be his way. Recently, while all the new hires started, he's been very rude to some of the new hires at work here, especially the Hispanic people. He says stuff like, "Well, you can just go back to Mexico," when in disagreement, and "Black people don't need a national anthem. If you think otherwise, then you're racist." I'm pretty nice to Phil when he speaks to me. I'm pretty sure he's very alone in this world, and I think his mental health was starting to take a toll, and I have a grandpa with dementia. Who's not a dick, just to clarify. So, I gave the guy grace, and so did the HR department in our small office. We'd consider him a very useful asset to the company, so our boss just told him not to talk to anybody unless it's strictly regarding work. Because I guess his comments were small talk. Fast forward to a week before April Fool's Day, and I planned to pull a prank on a coworker. I bought a little multi-frame and was going to place pictures of this other coworker sleeping at his desk, and was going to display it on my desk for all to see. We're friends, by the way. I did all that the night before, and lo and behold, the next morning my frame has "Jesus is risen" and "Happy Easter" in it. Phil's doing. I love Jesus like the next person, but that was my effing property on my damn desk. Jesus and cussing in the same sentence, oh my. So after some thought, I wanted to pull a small, petty prank on Phil, so I placed a small piece of paper between the battery and the connection in his mouse that night. When I tell y'all this man had little evidence bags written with red marker on the mouse, the battery, and the paper on our boss's desk the next morning, he was practically accusing one of my Hispanic co-workers because they've argued in the past. Phil was saying, "You're an effing lying piece of crap," to him, then telling our boss he's a liar, with a lot more cursing. This is all heard through closed doors and over some cubicles, so I might have missed some words, but I know a cuss word when I hear one. So I went to the boss's office and I told him I pulled the prank, and what happened the day before with the frame. He said it's okay, just don't mess with Phil again. Later that day, Phil was still angry that our boss wasn't confronting who he thought pulled the prank, and even some accomplices, none of which included me. They were screaming, arguing, and it was Phil's last day as he was fired. April Fools. And Phil has given gun threats post his firing, and we had to lock our doors to any without a key for a few months. I'm just starting to realize the damage I caused. Talk about a butterfly effect. 5. December 2020, middle of the pandemic, I was contracting as a stress engineer, basically check that things are strong enough, etc. 1 week before Christmas, I get a call from the agency I was contracting with, saying that my contract was not going to be renewed. I live in the UK and had been working from home for about 6 months following the lockdown. I was part of a small team. One member of the team was a weasel in love with his own brain. He used a lot of big words and waffled on in front of the client, basically, an expert turd polisher of the highest caliber. I was more succinct and just stuck to the facts when reporting on the progress of my analysis. So the whole project was a bit of a crap show. Client kept changing their mind about how they wanted this part analyzed. I was just a contractor and as such had to do what they said. I never did find out why it was me they decided to can, but I can guess. I think the multiple changes and delays were put on me, and Weasel Boy obviously convinced them he was much more valuable than me. For a bit of background, this guy was a serious dick. I was once tasked with checking some of his analysis. I did. I found some errors in his calculations. I corrected them and sent them back. He didn't like that, not one bit. So he takes the knife to her laughing, and as he does, turns to me and says, "Why so serious? Let's put a smile on that face of yours." Sorry. Lost my train of thought there. Anyway, I corrected his calculations and gave him a much simpler way of doing it. Rather than use my method, which was correct, he spends 2 days with his weaselly little face buried in a maths textbook, looking up a more advanced matrix method, which did the same thing as what I had given him but was too busy jerking himself off over the matrices and how great they are. Bear in mind the following: as contractors, we were there to get the job done. He had a method, the one I gave him, and he refused to use it. He wasted 2 days of the client's money looking up a method that did the same thing. A few days later, we were making coffee, and he says that he sent his calculation off to the client, who was really impressed with my matrix method. I was gobsmacked. 1, you're a little prick and I hate you. 2, you wasted 2 days, you little fart weasel. And 3, it isn't your method. You read what others had done and you took the next step. You didn't earn the knowledge for yourself, so you don't take any responsibility for it. You stood on the shoulders of geniuses to accomplish something as fast as you could, and before you even knew what you had, you patented it, and packaged it, and slapped it on a plastic lunchbox, and now you're selling it. Well, sorry. Needless to say, he was a weasel and a cerebral narcissist, and he just needed drop kicking, but he gets kept on. Enter dickhead number 2. This guy is technically our leader, and well, he was a prick as well, but I won't get into that too much. About 4 months after being let go, I've been scratching around for work for months. I'm married and we have 3 kids, savings used up. My eldest actually gave us money from his trust fund to tide us over. I had taken a job in a warehouse, working Saturday, Sunday, Monday, doing 12-hour shifts. It was tough work and the supervisor was a dickhead. We needed kneecapping. So I took this so that I could continue to look for work during the week. One day I'm sitting there and my phone rings. Dickhead 2. "Oh, how's it going?" "Screw you, you prick, you haven't spoken to me in months." "Oh, hi. How's it going?" "Do you remember that analysis you did? Well, do you still have the analysis files? The client has lost them." "You cheeky prick. 4 months and not a word. Ever once tried to help me find work or even drop me a text, and now you want my help?" "Oh, my friend, there's a special place in hell for you, you soulless, money-grubbing cockwomble." "Yes, I think I do, but they're not the latest iteration. You'll have to check for some of the later updates." "Oh, great. If you could send them, that would be great." Send them? Why don't I send you to the back rooms where you can get a stick job from an entity? You colossal cum stain. Sure, will do. I was gobsmacked. How can people be such pricks? The client lost the files? So? Sounds like a personal problem. You might wonder why I gave them the files. Well, because I knew something he didn't know. The reason why I was able to summarize the results of the analysis so quickly was because I had written some code to go through all the output files of the analysis and strip out only the results we were interested in. I gave him 40 files. Have fun manually looking through them and stripping out what you need. It would take ages. Oh, and like I said, they were old files, out of date. Take them and shove them up your butt, and while you're at it, tell that weasel that he is a cuckolded little henpecked sphincter, and I'm glad that his wife spends all his money and his mother-in-law lives in his house and complains at him. Thanks for listening. Hey everybody, Hellfreezer here, and thank you very much for listening to Revenge's Ice Cream 381. And thank you very much to everybody who allowed me to use their story. Before you go, please hit the things, the stuffs, and the whatnots. And we're not going to be doing any questions of the day for now. I'm going to not retiring them permanently. I'm just giving them a little bit of a break. We'll bring them back at some point in the future. So until next time, thank you very much for listening, and take very good care of yourselves.